All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is David Davis and this is Hyperconvergence for the SMB. Thanks for taking time to join us today. We will get started with the webinar actually right now. We've got a lot of attendees here already, so no need to wait any longer. I appreciate your time today. Before we get started, I want to first introduce myself and my co-presenter today so that you have a little bit of background about who's presenting. My name, again, is David Davis. I'm a VMware vExpert, a VCP, a CCIE, a video training author, especially around the topic of virtualization for Pluralsight.com. I started my career back as a server and network admin and worked my way up as an IT manager. And it was back then that I first implemented virtualization and really gained a lot of passion and actually, I dare I say, fell in love with it. And since then, I've been talking and writing about virtualization for numerous at numerous conferences and at numerous online publications. I'm on Twitter and I am David M. Davis if you want to follow up with me or find me later after the webinar. I'm proud to be joined by Mr. Dave Demlow from Scale Computing. Dave is Vice President of Product Management, and he joined Scale Computing back in 2010, and he's responsible for all aspects of product management, technical support, and services. Dave has over 25 years of storage and software product management experience working with Double Take Software. And in this webinar, I'm glad to have Dave on because he's going to be helping our audience to understand hyperconvergence, and I think most importantly, to give us a real world demo, or a real live demo of a hyperconvergence product, in this case from Scale Computing, their Hc3 product. So thanks for joining me, Dave. Dave, do you see my screen? Everything looking good there?
Yes, I do. You're coming through loud and clear.
Excellent. All right. Well, now that you know who we are, let's go ahead and get started talking about hyperconvergence, especially as it applies to the SMB. The agenda for the webinar here is, first off, what I call the SMB challenge, the challenges that are facing most every SMB out there today, and what I feel the solution is. I'll be answering the question, what is hyperconvergence? Because I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And some people, we want to get all on the same common ground, if you will. From there, we'll talk about the 5 ways that hyperconvergence can simplify your life, especially as an admin at an SMB. And then, as I talked about, Dave will be doing a demo of hyperconvergence in the real world, a real live demo. So very excited to see that. Before we get into that, we have a couple quick poll questions here for the audience, just to make sure that we're connecting with you. The first question is, how many people do you have in your IT infrastructure group? I'll give you a few seconds here to answer that. While you're answering that, someone says they're having trouble hearing us. If you're having trouble, you might try maybe the dial-in number, or if you're on the dial-in, maybe try the voice over IP option. I think GoToWebinar also has controls over where your speaker output might be coming from. It looks like it's just one person, though. I don't see anyone else talking about that. So hopefully everyone else can hear us. Let's see, we've got a lot of people answering the poll question already. I appreciate that. Let me go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And as you can see, we've got a wide mix of people, all the way from a 1-person or 2 to 3-person small shops, all the way up to more than 10 people. A good range on the webinar today. One more quick question here, and that is, what percentage of your infrastructure right now in the wiring closet or the data center is already virtualized? I know when I speak at the VMUGs, a lot of people, I talk to them about this. I ask this question in my sessions, and I get a wide range of answers, all the way from, we haven't started yet, to we're over 80% virtualized, or we're 100%, just about virtualized. So I appreciate you sharing your current situation. Let me go ahead and share the results. And as you can see, again, a wide range. 9% haven't started yet. which is actually a great starting point, I think, to learn about hyperconvergence, because you haven't already invested a lot, perhaps in a storage area network. You haven't invested a lot in some existing hypervisor, licenses. So it's a great starting point. But even for those who are 80% or more virtualized, there's still, tremendous value in what we have to talk about today. So thanks for answering those poll questions. Let's go ahead and talk about the challenges that companies of all sizes are facing, but especially SMBs. The problem, in my opinion, is just overwhelming complexity and unnecessary complexity. I mean, we in IT, we're used to having complexity, right? And in fact, in many ways, we embrace it. We love complexity. But there comes a point to it where it's just unnecessary. I mean, after all, we're in IT. We have our jobs to be serving the business and to be providing the business applications and devices and accesses as quickly as we possibly can. And more and more, I think complexity is just getting in the way. You've got server infrastructure, network, storage. You've got advanced solutions like high availability. You've got backup. You've got disaster recovery, advanced hypervisor, features. This is just tremendous, overwhelming complexity. And in many cases, companies, they don't, this is again eating away at the time that they need to be working on, real world business technology activities that they could actually affect the bottom line. And in many cases, there's advanced features that they don't even have the time, or the money to implement because it's just too complex. So at the same time, we in IT are forced more and more with increased expectations and demands. So our end users, who are actually our customers, they're using consumer devices and consumer services. They've got their iPhone and their Android. They go to the App Store. They get a new application in seconds. They access their Dropbox. They share files. They send photos. They do all these things. They watch movies on demand, right? And everything that they use just seems to work 24/7 by 365 for the most part, without fail. And when they come to work, they have those exact same expectations. Things should never go down. We should get our applications almost immediately when I want a new application. And when we want a new device, we should be able to get it faster than me having to go down, to Best Buy and buy a new laptop or a new iPhone, right? It should be faster than that because we're already at the office. It should be almost instantaneous. So we've got these increased demands and expectations. And at the same time, we're being pushed back, with budgets. We're being told to do more with less. You shouldn't need more people. You should just be efficient and be able to get this done, thanks to new technology, even faster, than ever before. And what they don't realize is we've got this overwhelming complexity in IT. And in my mind, the answer is simplification. We have to find ways to simplify what we do, to simplify the data center. And perhaps we actually can do more with less. Perhaps there is an answer instead of just pulling our hair out by using more advanced technologies that make our life easier and simplify what we do. We could actually meet these technology expectations, like high availability or new applications within minutes. Perhaps we could provide the increased server and application demands. When someone walks in and says, "Hey, great news! We bought a new company. We're going to bring on 200 new end users. Isn't that great news?" And you say, "Well, can I hire a new person?" No, I don't think we need to do that. If our life was easier, if we had more advanced solutions, perhaps we could meet that. And finally, decrease our stress and maybe spend some time doing something for the company that showed real bottom line value and perhaps even help our career, right? We could learn new technology. We'd have time to learn the new advancements in virtualization or cloud computing or so forth. So that's my recommendation is simplification and greater efficiency through new technology. A lot of us out there who have implemented virtualization, we have gained efficiencies. Like I said, I'm passionate about virtualization. But at the same time, in many cases, if we haven't gone to 100% virtualization, virtualization has created some complexities. because if we still have physical servers and now we have virtual servers, we might have multiple management interfaces. Maybe we have two different storage arrays. Maybe we have resource islands, like perhaps we implemented virtualization just for, let's say, VDI, or just for a new tier one, a new application. So we have different systems to manage, and it makes being efficient, honestly difficult. It also makes, for different policies and different management components. Maybe there's different groups and different application owners, and it makes for, also for different vendor finger pointing in some cases, because maybe you virtualize some application and you used one brand of server and a different brand of storage, and the vendor doesn't like that, and so there can be, a lot of finger pointing sometimes in these, complex virtual infrastructures. What we need, in my opinion, is to rise to this, sort of infrastructure engineer in the data center, where you have one person who's knowledgeable across server, network, storage, and virtualization, and can kind of, do it all, instead of having, I know some shops have a storage admin and a server admin and a network admin. Why can't we just have this infrastructure engineer? And in most cases, the answer is complexity. The storage is too complex. We have to have a person just dedicated to that. They have to go to training. They have to get certification. And if it wasn't so complex, perhaps we could, become that more efficient, infrastructure engineer kind of shop. Virtualization has also introduced a couple other challenges. Like, I'm not sure if you've heard of the I/O blender effect, where when we had dedicated directly attached storage to physical servers, the I/O characteristics were predictable going to that storage. So we could size the LUNs with that directly attached storage based on the needs of the application, whether it was read heavy or write heavy. With virtualization, everything has been blended together. Maybe all the VMs are on a single LUN, and they all have different, I/O characteristics, and it causes, in many cases, I/O latency. And companies don't see that until they increase their number of virtual machines. Also, virtualization in some cases doesn't always bring the efficiencies that we had hoped for in terms of the time to deliver new services and new applications, because we still have maybe the storage island, and we have the network configuration and the applications and so forth. And that brings us to hyperconvergence, which I believe gives companies of all sizes, but especially SMBs, a lot of promise. My general definition, kind of the one sentence elevator pitch of hyperconvergence is it's the simplification of the data center. And they say, well, what do you mean? Tell me more, right? So let me tell you a little bit more. In most cases, hyperconvergence is where you fold the storage infrastructure into the compute or the server infrastructure or the server layer. So if you had let's say an existing virtual infrastructure or even physical servers with a storage area network or a NAS, you would be able to eliminate that dedicated storage and distribute your storage resources across all the servers. So you might call it, it's at some level, it has distributed storage, but there's more to it than that. You're also leveraging virtualization. So you need to ensure that you're 100% virtualized, or you're moving towards that goal. But what hyperconvergence gives you is really the intelligent software to have, in most cases, a single point of management. So you've got a single interface to control the virtual infrastructure as well as the storage infrastructure, as well as advanced features in most cases. And in with many hyperconvergent solutions, the advanced features are included, but you have hopefully much simpler administration. So you don't have a bunch of add-on, bolt-on solutions from third parties. You have, let's say, replication or high availability. It's just all built in, and perhaps it's even just enabled by default. Hyperconvergence provides total cost of ownership, or TCO improvements, because you're eliminating the storage layer. You're also eliminating the complexity associated with that. It also provides TCO improvements because it's a smaller step size. So for companies, what that means is for companies that are, let's say, considering moving to virtualization, they have to buy a dedicated storage area network that's going to need to last them for 3 to 5 years, where they're going to have to oversize it for not only for capacity but also for I/O, and so that's going to be a giant box that's going to cost them maybe 50 or 100 or more thousands of dollars. With hyperconvergence, because the storage is distributed across the servers, when you add a new server, you add more storage capacity and more I/O throughput. And those servers don't have to be monster behemoth mini computer, mainframe size servers, or it's not a giant rack. They're, small, let's say 1 or 2 U boxes, and you just add up over time your compute and storage capacity at the same time. Hyperconvergence also provides simplification, so there's less to manage, which gives you the ability to focus on the business applications. And hyperconvergence solutions also, in most cases, give you this sort of one hand to hold, or one back to pat, if you will, where you have a single vendor to call for storage, for compute, for virtualization, and other things. So it reduces the finger pointing. Again, it reduces the complexities, and in most cases, the cost as well. And so hyperconvergence goes beyond just, we put the storage in the compute. There's a lot more to it than that, which I think you'll see in the demonstration. So 5 different ways that I came up with here that hyperconvergence can simplify the life of the administrator. The first one is complete visibility. And when I say that, I mean you've got the storage in the virtualization. It's managed by a single interface. So you suddenly have down to the VM layer, storage, statistics, as well as memory, compute, network. You've got this greater control and visibility. Much easier troubleshooting and support. Of course, you've eliminated a storage infrastructure with cabling and its own management, and also its own support contract. So it's going to save you money on maintenance, and support and upgrades even over time, because as we know, a storage infrastructure is not inexpensive to upgrade when you need more disk or more disk drawers or more memory, for caching. Hyperconvergence, number 3 here, the point is it's going to give you simpler capacity management as well. So I'm not sure if you've ever run into the problem where you've got a bunch of virtual machines on a single LUN. That LUN is running out of space. You're going to have to move a virtual machine or some number of virtual machines to another LUN. And you might be doing it for capacity, or you might even be doing it for I/O throughput, because those VMs have different, I/O characteristics. Maybe some are very write heavy, and they need to go onto a LUN with a different RAID configuration. So with hyperconvergence, you've got just storage, one giant storage pool that all the virtual machines go on, and it's highly available. It's distributed across all the servers. So no longer do you have to worry about storage high availability as well, because so many small businesses, especially if they do have a NAS or a SAN, in most cases they can just afford one. And if that goes down, unfortunately, everything goes down, because they don't have redundant storage arrays. They might not have redundant storage controllers and redundant switches that are redundantly connected to every server, in the data center. So with hyperconvergence, you gain storage high availability immediately across the entire hyperconverged infrastructure. Number 4 is the advanced features are built in. So whether it's high availability for VMs or for storage, or perhaps even things like replication for disaster recovery. And then finally, because you're combining things, you have less boxes to manage, less support contracts to manage. You're going to save time and money on maintenance and support. So with that, I'd like to bring in Dave and Scale Computing's hyperconvergence solution, which is called Hc3, where they've done exactly what I'm talking about here. They've combined the storage and compute into one. They've got a virtualization layer across it, and it's the data center really simplified. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hc3 and how it can help SMBs?
Sure. Yeah. So our Hc3 product, as you mentioned, was one of the first hyperconverged solutions out there. We also believe that hyperconverged solutions are generally best distributed in kind of an appliance format. So we sell Hc3 as a fully integrated hardware software solution. It's a highly available redundant system. So you would start with a minimum of at least 3 nodes. Every one of those nodes has compute resources, has integrated storage resources, has our HyperCore operating software on there preloaded, pre-installed. That gives you your virtualization layer, your hypervisor, all the storage management that actually has the built-in virtualization management. And as we'll show in the demonstration portion, literally from taking 3 of these nodes or more out of the box, cabling them up, giving them IP addresses so that they can talk to each other and act as a single unit, act as a cluster, and that you can connect in and manage them and connect your VMs to them. We designed the whole experience to be very, very simple, from that initial out of box to creating your first virtual machines, to expanding the system over time, to handling the inevitable hardware failure, to things like firmware updates, which get applied across the entire system in a rolling manner, no VM downtime or workload. So again, we looked at the whole experience from again, that out of the box to the ongoing support, and tried to simplify every aspect of that we could.
Very nice, very nice. So I know a lot of the viewers or attendees today on the call probably haven't heard about scale computing before. So what can you tell us about the company?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, as I mentioned, we were really one of the first companies to come out with that complete, fully integrated virtualization appliance, where from one vendor, from Scale Computing, you could get everything you need. The complete data center in a box, no third-party software licenses you needed to add, and we really focus on providing that integrated IT infrastructure. And by owning the entire stack, the fact that it's our own software, from the the hypervisor to the storage layer, we can provide that simplification. We can provide a lot of automation, and so under the hood, while we leverage some open source components, we use some pieces like the KVM hypervisor that's part of the Linux mainline updates. We wrap that around, as you'll see, a lot of simplification in our user interface and a lot of advanced technology to help automate that. You can kind of think of it as a Linux system administrator in the box. So there's a lot of patented technology. And then from the company side, the founding team of Scale, has historically, kind of the DNA has been to build products that have radically simplified management. So we didn't just look at how could we automate, all the steps that you'd have to go through to manage a SAN and connectivity and all those consoles. We really looked at that ground-up approach of how to redesign the entire system so that it's inherently simple to manage and expand, that things like high availability are just inherent and designed in, and then wrap that around comprehensive support. As you mentioned, there's one hand to hold. You call Scale, there's no finger pointing of hey, is it a storage issue, is it a hypervisor issue, is it a management issue, is it a hardware issue? We provide full support for the entire solution. We also have some unique things that we'll talk about, like remote support capability, where our support team can just get right onto your system. The fact that it is delivered as an appliance, you don't have to spend the first 10, 20 minutes explaining what your environment looks like, or how things are connected, or what versions of what components you're on. The Scale representative knows exactly what your system looks like. Really, the only difference between your system and many others is probably how many nodes you have, and then your particular applications and data. And the key result of that is that customers using Scale are very, very happy with the solution, are very, very loyal to the solution. We do constant surveys to monitor and track what's called a Net Promoter Score, which is more or less translates into would you recommend Scale to a friend? And overwhelmingly, we have a very, very high Net Promoter Score, higher customer loyalty than even the Apple iPhone has, which is considered a very popular and brand loyal product. And that's something we continuously monitor and strive to increase. Actually, as of this slide's a little bit old. As of last quarter, it was up to 79, and we're continuing to drive that as high as possible. While hyperconvergence doesn't necessarily fit into just specific vertical market segments, some of the areas that we've focused on and see a lot of widespread adoption have been in areas like healthcare, education, financial services, manufacturing, and government and defense. And you know, government tends to be, you know, city, county governments, things like that. Another particular aspect of scale that's not necessarily highlighted here is we are really laser focused on what we would call, you know, mid-market to, you know, small IT shops. And kind of our definition is, as you know, many of you answered on the initial survey, IT departments that are as few as one guy and maybe sometimes a part-time guy to, you know, probably, you know, in the 10, you know, around 10 or so. Given that, you know, they kind of have some unique needs, that they're, you know, general purpose, they're responsible for the entire infrastructure versus just individual silos, and really benefit from some of the benefits that Hyperconvergence provides for them.
Very nice. And actually, I was doing some research this week on Net Promoter scores, and
Yep.
I found out that in the 70s is very difficult to achieve, and I mean, it's up with some of the best and most respected companies in the world. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Now that I've learned a little bit more about it, I know 75 is very
Yeah, it's
impressive.
considered world class, and yep, absolutely. So again, as I mentioned, you know, we designed Hc3 specifically for mid-sized companies. So, you know, the key aspects that were inherent, we wanted to provide the same or better high availability that you would get if you kind of built a virtual infrastructure the old way, or you went out and bought a SAN or an AS device, and you set up multipathing, and you set up multiple hosts, and you loaded a hypervisor, and you set up a virtual machine management server. You know, you do all that to achieve a certain level of resiliency. If a host fails, you can fail over the VM. So we wanted all that to be as good or better, and we've accomplished that. We wanted to provide very easy scalability. That's actually one of the things that is usually pretty complex in kind of the old 3-2-1 SAN environments, is, you know, adding additional storage or adding additional SAN or expanding a data store. We wanted to make that very, very simple to do, you know, more or less just as a matter of, you know, turning up another node with the appropriate resources that you need and adding it to the cluster. And through all this, even though, you know, we use the word, you know, cluster and talk about, you know, virtualization and you know, all the networking aspects between the systems, we wanted to maintain the simplicity as if this were just one, you know, big monolithic server, but, you know, with that high availability and so forth built in.
Yeah.
And with that, yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't realize we had a slide for the demo. So yeah, I guess this is the point we would translate over to the demo. So as I mentioned here, you know, with Hc3, there's no additional software to buy. Everything you need is included, preloaded. There's no charge for, you know, specific features, and you know, we kind of call that VTAX, all the things that you know, generally have to pay for or set up or license or maintain, you know, just to be able to achieve high availability virtualization. David, can you see my screen at this point?
Yes, I can, Dave.
Okay, great. So, what I want to do is, you know, get you right in and let you kind of see the product, so you can see an example of how easy a hyperconverged solution would be. We've got a couple different systems here that we'll show, but for example, this system that you're seeing right now, this is one of our entry-level HC1000 systems. It's a 3-node configuration, which is our minimum configuration that's required to provide full redundancy, high availability, give you sufficient resources so that you can handle things like a rolling upgrade. You can move VMs around and so forth to handle those scenarios. This system obviously already has a bunch of workloads running, but, you know, imagine if you had taken these out of the box. Every one of these nodes has basically redundant power supplies. You cable those up, has 4 network ports. There's 2 that are reserved for what we call our backplane network. That's for all the node-to-node communication, for the clusters to talk to each other for things like data mirroring and striping. Every bit of data that's created on the system, there's 2 copies stored. They're distributed across different disks and different nodes, both to aggregate the performance and to handle disk failures, so that you've got redundant copies of your data. That's all just kind of under the hood. There's nothing, you know, required to set that up other than, you know, bringing the systems up, giving them their IP address. They form the cluster and take care of all that automatically. And then basically from that point, there's no, you know, storage setup or provisioning. I can, you know, right out of the box come here and create a VM, or if I've already you know, had other ones, migrate or import them. We'll go ahead and do that here. I will call this demo Thursday. We'll give it a name, test. In this case, for organization, maybe we'll put it into one of these existing groups, or we'll just put it into this test group here. We'll go ahead and take the defaults of we're going to install Windows. We'll use our high performance drivers, which are included. And then what virtual resources do I want to give? I'll give this one 4 CPU cores, give this 8 gigabytes of RAM. We'll leave the 100 gigabyte boot drive, but then I want to have a data drive where I can store up to 300 gigabytes of data. By the way, all of the storage on the Hc3 system is thin provisioned, so even though I just allocated 400 gigabytes of capacity, that's not actually removed from the storage pool until those VMs actually write to those. So you can feel free to allow for growth. And then the last question is basically how do I want to install? In this case, I've already uploaded through my web browser here some ISO images for Windows and Linux distribution. So we'll just go ahead and click Create. That takes just a couple of seconds for that to register with the system, carve up those resources. That'll show up in the test group as we showed here. I'll go ahead and click the power button, and the system will automatically figure out from the compute standpoint which node in the cluster is best to run that particular workload on. So which has enough RAM, which is basically has the best resource availability in order to run that particular workload. That'll get selected by the system automatically, and it will start that up. Give it a couple seconds here. I guess while it's doing that, one of the things I'll also show you is the cloning capability. So outside of the initial installation, one of the very common things would be to set up Windows templates. Maybe you load Windows, you install your operating system, your backup agents, your antivirus, whatever tools or things like that. Get everything all equipped and patched the way you want. Sysprep it, and then use that to quickly deploy fully installed Windows configuration. So here I'll go ahead and we'll create a clone. We'll just call this demo clone. That actually, one of the advantages of doing it that way, in addition to being quicker, I don't have to go through the entire Windows installation process, is the clones are thin provisioned, so that will actually share any blocks that are common with the parent image, the template that I cloned from, and only when I'm running that virtual machine I start making changes will it actually allocate unique blocks for that particular workload. So we'll go ahead and on the new VM that we powered up that we're installing, we'll go ahead and click the console button here. And I think I'm hitting some network latency issues. I'm actually about 800 miles away from where this particular cluster is running, so it's a little slow to connect. We'll give it a few moments here.
Yeah, no problem, Dave. We've got a lot of questions coming in here. I want to encourage the audience to keep this coming. We've got a Q&A session coming up at the end of the webinar here as well. But maybe a couple of them we might answer right now. For example, one of them is how does Windows licensing work with Hc3?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's an easy one. I mean, the simple answer is it works exactly the same way on Hc3 as it would on Hyper-V or a VMware platform. There's no differences on the Windows licensing side. If you're running more than 10 or so virtual machines, typically what becomes most cost effective to run a Windows data center license, and then you buy one data center license per physical node, and you have basically unlimited amount of guest VMs that you can create. You don't have to worry about moving licenses around for things like live migration or failover. And so that's what most cases. Otherwise, you can, just like on VMware or Hyper-V, you can also use the Windows standard licensing, which gives you the rights for 2 virtual instances. And then you just have to do kind of the calculations for each node on what's the greatest number of Windows VMs you may ever need to run on those nodes. But the simple answer is it's 100% the same as on VMware or Hyper-V from that aspect.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. And
yep, go ahead.
I see the new VM has booted here, and so this VM is automatically highly available. You didn't have to configure high availability,
Right.
put it in some sort of high available cluster, and it's not just at the compute layer; it's also at the storage layer. Is that true, Dave?
That is totally true. Yeah. So any of the the bits that are storage, as I mentioned, those will be distributed across all the nodes, all the disks, and depending on the model. For example, if we look at the disk view here, I can see that each one of these nodes actually has 4 individual 500 gigabyte disks. If we look at a different system here, for example, this is one of our higher end Hc4000. Each one of these nodes has 8 600 gigabyte disks in those. All of the drives are aggregated together into a single pool for both performance and capacity. So every bit of data that's created, like as I mentioned earlier, 2 copies are created. They're distributed redundantly across different nodes. And then from a performance standpoint, all of the I/O for all the disks is aggregated and available to any VM that needs it. There's no specific affinity that this VM is only using the small number of disks. That's also why, as you grow the system, as you add additional capacity, you add additional disk resources, the system can actually get faster. So existing VMs would now have more disks that they could write to, and you can actually increase the I/O capacity for the system as you grow.
Very nice. And one of the things I wonder about is the initial deployment. I mean, I know there's a lot of small businesses out there, and of course that initial deployment scares them. Do they need a consultant? Are they going to have to buy? In this case, we don't have to buy dedicated, expensive storage that they might have to go to a class for or have a consultant for. But let's say in a VMware environment, which is what I've been trained on in the past, is you've got your servers, you've got your storage, you connect them all to the storage, and then for centralized management, you have to deploy a virtual appliance. Connect that to all the VMs, and if that central appliance goes down, then you really have to manage all the hosts individually. And so how does that work with Hc3?
Yeah, well, with Hc3, there's no separate management server. There's no single management server. Basically, the management is all done through this web user interface, and all the management view is distributed also redundantly across the cluster. There's actually no VM. It's just kind of built into an inherent capability of our HyperCore operating system. Not that it's too exciting. If you see here, I pointed my web browser to the .20 address, which happens to be the first node of the cluster. If I switch over to any one of the other nodes, it'll ask me to log in here, but I'll get the exact same view. So I don't have to connect to one place. There's basically the management state and all the activity and actions are distributed across all the nodes in the cluster, and there's no need for that kind of single brain that's controlling everything. There's a consistent view throughout the entire cluster, and again, it doesn't matter where I connect into. They're all going to get the same view, same resources, same level of control. So even if a node fails, in this case, I would just redirect my browser to one of the other nodes if I happen to be connected to a specific node that went down.
Very nice, very nice. So every node has the centralized management interface. So if it doesn't matter if any node goes down, there's not a single point of failure for that centralized management tool. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And they all collaborate on, basically, the metadata state of, which VMs and so forth. And then, as we've mentioned several times, the data is always distributed redundantly as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Let's see. Other questions here. What about companies out there that have VMware? Does Scale help them, or is there a way to convert or move?
There's absolutely a way to convert and move. We can do physical to virtual migrations, virtual to virtual migrations. We offer a tool that can actually do the migrations with very little downtime. Often in the middle of 20 to 30 minutes of total downtime to get the VM off your physical server or your VMware or Hyper-V environment onto the Hc3 system. We also offer services where we can do that for the customer. We also kind of an in-between option is we have what we call a fast start service, where we basically will more or less train you on the tool, migrate one VM, give you the run book essentially on here's how we did it, and then you can go and do the rest of the migrations on your own, kind of following that technique. But it's very easy, and very often we find customers who may have dabbled early on with some VMware environments. Maybe they did some free SX and have a couple of isolated virtual server hosts. They when they go to want to make the move to high availability, moving to Hc3 is is a natural experience there. Even customers that have built the whole 3-2-1 architectures and are going to do an infrastructure refresh, or often they just need to expand their environment. Very often we find customers who bought in on the VMware Essentials Plus, which is limited to 3 hosts. They're now at the point where they need to add one and realize that they need to more or less throw away all their existing licenses, go and relicense everything with the enterprise, the a la carte licensing, which can be very, very expensive. And they find that they can move into an Hc3 system for for approximately the same cost, and then not need to worry about those additional license costs down the line.
Yeah, so we talked about use cases a little bit. I mean, one of them would be, I guess, for an SMB, they have a few servers. Maybe they're going to need to increase that number of servers. Maybe buy a small NAS or SAN. That would be a great use case or a great point when they should look at HC3. What are some other use cases, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, the infrastructure refresh is certainly one, whether it's, moving physical to virtual. We find in the SMB, most companies run pretty much all their applications on Hc3. Maybe there's here or there the outlier that, requires some dedicated device or, things like that. But, so general purpose, in terms of applications, a lot of Windows-centric applications, Exchange, SharePoint, file services. Terminal services, a lot is a great application that is very commonly deployed on Hc3. I guess it's now referred to as remote desktop session host, but that level of centralized managed desktops. Databases, I believe I mentioned. Obviously Linux applications and virtual appliances are often very common. A lot of line of business applications, whether it's the manufacturing tool or the ERP solutions, things like that. So pretty general purpose IT type environments.
Yeah, so replacing existing equipment, infrastructure refresh, maybe some new sites, like especially remote sites. Someone here is asking about, what if you had a number of different locations, each with HC3, if I understand the question correctly. Um, is that a problem if they had relatively slow connections between the sites?
Okay. Well, what they may be referring to, and this is actually a feature we haven't really even discussed yet on this that is just become available in HC3 is built-in replication. And so in which case, like if we look at some of these virtual machines that are running here, for example, the Scribe domain controller, this virtual machine is actually being replicated to a remote site. It's in kind of a continuous replication. That's kind of a whole nother discussion. The bandwidth required for replication. The simple answer is, it really is a matter of, how much data is changing. So this I can see here a history for this VM, and kind of it's replicating, about every 5 minutes or so, and sending, 40, 50 meg, every interval. There, it's going to depend on, how much data is changing, what is the bandwidth connection between the remote sites, and what the recovery point objective is. But there's definitely ways, and because you can, we're just sending the data changes, because you can pick and choose which VMs would actually be replicated. If you did want to replicate between multiple sites, it's pretty easy to determine what amount of bandwidth would be required to meet your recovery point objective for that.
Yeah. So that's one of the advanced features actually I was alluding to in the start of the webinar was replication. I mean, which is especially, powerful really for small businesses who could never afford, data disaster recovery replication solutions because they were just too expensive, or they might be able to afford it for one application, but not for all applications. So here you're talking about it's just built in to the infrastructure, and you can replicate from one hyperconverged infrastructure to another. So maybe the
Right,
company
exactly.
they have two sites, they just replicate all their critical VMs across the network. And of course, in that case, you would be, concerned, and you have to monitor the network utilization between the two. But if you just had two HE3 infrastructures at two different remote sites and they're using them locally, then there's no concern about the network bandwidth really, because there's not a lot going on
Right.
without something like replication.
Yep, yeah, and like I said, yeah, you can pick and choose the VMs. It's designed to be, very efficient. You can even, if there's a VM that, is changing a lot, you can pause the replication activity. There's lots of different ways of, adjusting to, different workflows, different, types of RPO. As well, but yeah, I mean that's an important thing. All of the features. This is a brand new feature that it has just come out. It's available as a firmware upgrade. There's no additional charge for that feature. Customers who are moving from our 5.0 software to our 6.0 software will first of all do the upgrade in a rolling fashion. They click one button and walk away, and the entire system's upgraded node by node without taking any virtual machines down. Capabilities like a live migration. So, for example, I'm going to take this UEB clone VM. I'm going to click the move button, and I'm going to say, live migrate over here. Those kinds of things that you might do. It's done automatically in a rolling upgrade, but you might do if you were adding additional compute capacity and you want to then rebalance, your existing workloads to take advantage of new compute. Things like that are all built in. Capabilities like point-in-time snapshots. Take a pre-patch Tuesday. Snapshot, that's built in. That's done at a VM level with virtually no impact on the virtual machine running. And by the way, just as a note, any snapshots that you take manually are also replicated, so those points in time would be available to restore either locally or remotely if you are doing the remote replication. So all those kinds of things are just inherent and built into the system and designed to be super easy. You mentioned the install process. You don't need a consultant necessarily to come in and do it for you. We basically walk the user through the install remotely. It's just for the most part, as I mentioned, configuring those IP addresses, bringing up the cluster, logging in. There's a couple of configuration settings that you want to make sure you do. Things like setting up DNS names and time server and mail server so that you can get email alerts for monitoring, things like that. That's really about it. There's no storage provisioning. There's no creating targets or LUNs or shares or connecting those. As I showed, it's literally just start creating VMs. Everything's highly available. All the capabilities you need from handling the disk failures are done automatically. If one of these nodes were to fail, any VMs running on that node will automatically fail over to other systems. Anything that requires attention, you'll get those email alerts. Also in the UI, you'll see right up here that there's one item that needs my attention. In this case, my capacity, I'm at 71% overall capacity. That's pretty low. That's something I want to be aware of, and either order some additional nodes. Which, by the way, we offer full compute nodes. We also do have the ability to expand just the storage capacity. If I'm fine on compute, like I kind of seem to be here, I don't have any plans to, deploy any more VMs that would take up additional RAM. I can just add a storage node to this and very cost-effectively expand the storage capacity and performance. So there's lots of different ways to expand the system, and certainly it's a very easy onboarding experience, and everything basically is handled through scale.
Yeah, some more good questions coming in here. What about business critical applications like SQL Server, SharePoint, and Exchange?
They would be great candidates. I mean, again, everything is inherently highly available, so you would definitely want them to be on a platform that offers the kind of redundancy and resiliency that you would get with Hc3, and we do a lot of extensive testing. I happen to actually be, I think, over on this other cluster running some jet stress VMs somewhere here. Let me double click, and and I think actually some of the other workloads there are running the DVD store benchmark, which is a SQL server database benchmark that's kind of an industry standard. So those are very, very common applications deployed, and a great fit for the high availability on Hc3, and a great fit for inherent built-in replication that we're offering as well.
Very nice, very nice. Let's go ahead, if you don't mind, Dave. Let's go ahead and end the screen share here because your audio is cutting out a little bit. And
sorry, okay.
No, that's all right. And see, I'm going to share my slides again here.
Okay.
Do you see my screen now, Dave?
I do, yep.
There we go. And so, great demo, by the way. This slide is about your scale care support, and I know that's something we also talked about, which is the combining of support contracts. Fewer support contracts to maintain, and one call really for storage, for compute, for virtualization. But you guys also have some additional services. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah. So we mentioned the the remote installation. That's actually part of the initial purchase as well, to walk you through the setup and initial configuration of the Hc3 system. And usually there's about a hour or so walkthrough of the key capabilities, and that's about all you need to take the keys and drive. We have some customers who want more help integrating this into their networking. helping to configure, things like VLANs to isolate the node-to-node communication. Potentially the VM migration is one that, as I mentioned, we can provide, or kind of do the quick start where we train you to do that. And then, another case is for remote VM replication and failover. I mean, even though it's very, very easy, as we showed here, to more or less click and start the replication process, there can be a little bit more design in terms of monitoring, determining how much bandwidth is required. So there's some additional services that we can offer there as well. But as you mentioned, one of the keys is, first year is concluded. It's your hardware warranty, your software warranty. There's not multiple maintenance contracts. There's not different companies to call. We also, as I stated, have that remote support capability. So usually when you do call scale, they're going to ask you to open up a tunnel to your system. They can get in and see, more or less everything you're seeing from the user interface, as well as a lot of the under the hood, values and histories and logs, and figure out, if there's changes made, software upgrades that need to be applied, hardware issues that are handled via overnight replacement, those kinds of things. So it's a very, very seamless experience.
Very nice, very nice. We've got 10 minutes left here in the webinar. I want to respect everyone's time. We have first a couple quick audience poll questions here, and then we have a Q&A session, and then we have a big prize to give away at the end. So let's go ahead and do our 2 more quick poll questions. The first one is, how long before your next infrastructure refresh? Because that's a point at which a lot of people consider implementing hyperconvergence. If their storage area network, let's say, is going to be up on lease, or it needs replacing, or they have a group of servers, let's say they leased 3 years ago, it's going to need replacing. Many times it's less expensive to implement a hyperconvergent solution like Hc3 than to release the same group of existing servers or the exact same storage array. So another point in time we talked about is for disaster recovery, actually using Hc3 as a disaster recovery solution, putting it in a DR site. Let's see, we've got a lot of answers here already, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And as you can see, there's again a wide variety. A lot of 6% actually are working on infrastructure refresh now, and others it's 12 months are out, on the opposite end of the spectrum. Last poll question is, how long would it take you to recover key applications in the event of a infrastructure failure? In other words, are you using high availability today? And one thing I really love about Hc3 is not only is the compute highly available, but of course the storage is as well, which is something that I see so many shops they just don't have a solution for. The answer is always, well, the SAN better not go down. If it goes down, we're all in trouble, and that's one of the things I like about hyperconvergence. So I appreciate everyone answering those questions. Let's go ahead and move into our Q&A time here. So if you have more questions, go ahead and answer or post those in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to answer those. Right now, I'm just going to go down the list here. Dave, you mentioned the HC1000 that you had in the demo there. Roughly how many VMs could you run on a HC1000, and what are some of the other models of the higher end platforms that you all offer?
Sure. So yeah, we basically offer 3 different platforms. HC1000 our entry-level system. That one, if you kind of look at a small to typical VM, maybe 2.5 gig of RAM and typical storage capacity and IOPS, a 3-node entry-level system there, is probably in about the 30 VM range, and then as you add additional nodes, you grow out from there. The HC2000 kind of is about double the VM density, so it's got twice as much RAM. It's got more CPU cores. It goes to faster disks. The 2000 model uses only 10K or 15K SAS drives, so about double the IOPS, and so that is probably starts in a 50 VM and up range. and then the HC4000 that we recently introduced is about double the density of that. So, when you get into that kind of system, you're talking, dual socket CPUs, plenty of compute, 128 gig or 256 gig of RAM per node, 8 drives as I showed on that system, all the 10K or 15K SAS. So much higher capacity, and that you're probably easily into those hundreds of standard VM units. Now, obviously, not everybody runs 2 gig and 2.5 gig of RAM VM. So in reality, but that kind of gives you a general feel for where they're scaled, and we kind of tried to balance the amount of compute, the amount of RAM, the typical amount of storage, performance and capacity required. And as I mentioned, we also have various models where you can add just storage capacity performance. We have several models where you can increase the RAM. We have some for specialized environments where there are CPU upgrades to higher clock speed CPUs, just depending on what the particular needs of your workloads are.
Yeah, and when you say an HC1000, is that actually 3 compute nodes and 30 spread across all 3?
Yeah, so yeah, that 30 to 50 spread across a 3-node entry-level cluster, and then the other guideline we give is you always want a size for one complete node downtime. So when you're looking at that, it's really what could you run on a 3-node system if one of them were down on the surviving 2 nodes, because that's what you're going to have in the failure condition. That's also what you would be running on for a very small amount of time during a rolling upgrade if you were doing the non-disruptive upgrades on the system.
Right. And then what's the entry-level cost of that HC1000 3-node cluster?
Yeah, those start everything, again, the hardware, the software, the storage, the first year of support for an MSRP of about $25,499, and the systems just go up from there.
Wow. So for $25,000 roughly, you get 1 year of support, you get a 3-node highly available cluster for compute as well as for storage. So you don't have to buy a separate storage array. You get virtualization, hypervisor licenses, as well as centralized management for all of it.
That's it.
That's a really impressive entry-level price point, Dave. So I appreciate that. Let's see. We answered the price point question. What about for disaster recovery if they wanted to implement a scale for a DR solution? They have an existing data center. They want to use scale for DR. Is that possible?
It is possible, and I assume maybe the question is, they have an existing data center. Maybe they're running, VMware, which is a popular option. We actually do have, many customers that will do that. First deploy, a couple different ways. Either, deploy Hc3 as their DR site. We've also had customers that will deploy Hc3 as their upgraded production site and move their old VMware environment to be, the DR site. For that case, you do need to use guest-based software to do the replication if you're doing disaster recovery. We actually do, through a partnership agreement, we resell a product called Hc3 Availability, which is based on the Vision Solutions Double Take product, for those of you familiar with that, but very cost-effective licensing that would actually let you replicate, VMware virtual machines as they're running, continuous asynchronous replication into Hc3 target VMs that can be brought online for failover, or vice versa. And so we do have many customers that do that, often as a transition. Like I said, they bring in, this gives them the opportunity to bring Hc3 either to upgrade their production or to try out in a DR mode, and then down the line they can buy the second Hc3 system and then go to the full integrated replication that we showed.
And then what about backup?
Sure. So lots of different options on backup. Obviously anything that runs in the guest is with the guest agent is going to continue to work. So we have lots of customers that use products like Unitrends, Acronis, Backup Exec, and the like. We also, many customers supplement, the replication and snapshots that we provide to provide, some levels of operational recovery, so they can use that to, roll back from a bad Patch Tuesday event, or, restore some files off of a file server VM that, Joe the user deleted, today, but we're on the Saturday snapshot. So lots of different options. We also do have some built-in what's called an export capability, but you can think of it like a one-time backup that basically takes the VM running on Hc3, you specify a remote NAS device or Windows server, and it just dumps a full copy of that virtual machine, takes a snapshot, exports that, and then that can be kept as an additional level of backup as well.
Very nice, very nice. And then someone's asking about European distribution. Can they purchase scale in Europe?
Yep, yeah, we have Hc3 personnel and partners in Europe and customers across all of Europe.
Very nice, very nice. Um, a clarification here on the price point. They're asking, is it price per node, per VM, or other?
Well, it's sold per node. So when I gave that price of a 3-node entry-level HC1000 system, that's obviously 3 nodes. So the single node price is 1/3 of that. There's no magic there. So it's sold per node. There's a minimum of 3 required to form that entry-level cluster. But you can start with a 4-node or 5-node or 6-node cluster if you need to. But yeah, it's all per node, and then the 25,499 is the price for 3 entry-level HC1000 nodes.
And a question from the audience is, what's the storage capacity of that entry-level 25K system?
That one has 500 gig drive, so each node is 2 terabytes of raw capacity, and so figure with RAID 10 like mirroring, you got effectively 3 terabytes usable on that of usable storage capacity. So that actually is this system here. This is a 6 terabytes of total raw capacity, and then with the redundancy figure, it's about 3 terabytes of usable storage. And there's larger disks on that model available, and obviously the price increases based on the storage capacity, and then of course the performance of the disks.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, we've still got a number of questions left. We'll try to get back to you via email to answer those questions. We had so many questions come in. I want to respect everyone's time because we're at the top of the hour, and go ahead and do our prize giveaway here. The winner of the $300 Apple gift card is Eddie S. So I will be contacting Eddie via email, and I appreciate everyone attending the webinar today, and congratulations, of course, to Eddie. With that, I want to point out that Scale Computing has a great website with a lot of resources around hyperconvergence in general, but also about Hc3, the different models, and the price points as well. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And Dave, thanks so much for being on.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Well, everyone have a great day, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn more about hyperconvergence. I really, truly believe it has amazing potential to change data centers around the world, make them so much more efficient, less complex, and free up us administrators to make some amazing technological differences in the company instead of just keeping things up and running. So learn more about hyperconvergence and talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.